the law covers, examples are racial harassment, school segregation, and language services for emergent bilinguals. Equal education opportunities, discriminatory discipline, discrimination assignments into special education programs, retaliation for reporting, religious discrimination, bullying, and harassment. It began in June of 1963 when John F. Kennedy first introduced more civil rights protections. It was not until after his assassination when Lyndon B. Johnson used that as fuel, saying that there was no memorial oration or eulogy that could more eloquently honor President Kennedy more than the earliest possible passage of the Civil Rights Bill. From there, it was signed into law on July 2nd, 1964, so almost a year after its initiation. Specifically as it applies to education in schools, it is enforced by the Office of Civil Rights, which means that every complaint that comes should be investigated, the facts substantiated, and to figure out whether schools need to address any students' rights violations. In 2016, out of 2,439 complaints, only 57 were resolved. That is 22.2%, which is just less than a quarter of the complaints, and 15,000 are currently pending. In terms of what teachers and administrations and school systems can do is making sure that parents are educated on documenting incidents, that they're knowledgeable about the complaint procedure, and that they hold the federal government accountable. Unfortunately, the current administration is attempting to ignore civil rights enforcement. The other thing that teachers and administrations can do is to educate themselves on what harassment looks like and what to do in the event of incidents, and documentation is very important, so that when you come up against arguments of this doesn't happen here, that you've documented cases of it happening. And so document, report, and protect are the most important things that educators can do to make sure that their students feel like they're coming to a safe space when they're coming to school. I think what stood out the most for me about this law that is almost 60 years old is how particularly relevant it is in the United States right now, and how, based on what we do hear, the incidents we do hear about, that it is definitely not being utilized. It is not being enforced. It is not being supported. There are millions of students and families who do not feel safe in schools. They do not feel safe with the educators that have been tasked with caring for their children. And it just speaks to larger issues as a nation, as communities, as educators, as administrators. And again, it's just profoundly interesting to me that there are laws and protections in place for so many of the incidents that are happening, whether it is the uncharacteristically high number of students that are assigned to special education, or the kind of enforcement that is given as punishment to certain students that is not applied to all students. Just a lot of the discriminatory practices that are generally racially, culturally, and religiously motivated, and how we're not following the law.